Hey everyone, welcome to the investor.bet NRL round 26 betting preview, second last round of the regular season, and then we get into finals. In this video, I'm going to run through all the games coming up this weekend. We're going to go through the betting history between each of these matchups. We'll also look at the betting form for these teams. Have they been covering their recent games? Have their games been going over or under the totals? Then we'll also go through some stats and some of the key information you need to know before betting on these games to give you everything you need to make the best betting decisions. But before we get into this week's games, we'll quickly recap what happened in round 25. Kicked off on Thursday night with the Rabbitohs 40-0 over the St. George Dragons. Then on Friday night, we had two really key games with teams in the top four around that mix. The first game, Raiders scored a try in Golden Point to beat the Panthers 20 points to 16. Obviously, the missed field goal by Nathan Cleary. And then the Panthers had the opportunity to tackle Jed Stewart when the ball landed. He jumped up to catch it. Instead, they decided not to touch him, let him run away. Then Ethan Strange goes down the sideline and sets up the try for Weeks. The later game, Storm beat the Bulldogs 20-14. Seagulls 58-30 over the Dolphins in Cherry Evans 350th. Manly got up for that game, and also the defensive issues for the Dolphins absolutely on display. Like, the Seagulls have been struggling to score points leading into that game. Their previous 4 weeks, they'd gone 12, 4, and 4, and then running 58 points, which is their highest score by far of the season. And that makes it now 3 consecutive games for the Dolphins where they've given up at least 38 points. So 58 here, 38 against the Broncos, and 64 against the Roosters. That's their last 3 weeks defensively. And really bad signs for a team in that fringe of the top 8, particularly with the Roosters losing their game on Saturday night. The middle game on Saturday, the Warriors 32-18 over the Titans. Eels upset the Roosters 30 points to 10. Then on Sunday, the Broncos 46-12 over the Knights, and the Cowboys went down to Sydney and in almost an identical scoreline from the game in Townsville earlier in the season, beat the Tigers 34-28. The other game earlier in the year that they played, Cowboys won that 32-28. What happened during this round? All the teams who won the game also covered the spread. We had 4 favorites win, 4 underdogs win. The underdogs who won, Canberra beating Penrith, Manly beating the Dolphins, Parramatta beating the Roosters, and the Cowboys beating the Tigers. The favorites obviously then were covering 4 games. This season, underdogs are 101-87 against the spread across all games. Home teams who won 4 games this weekend obviously also covered 4 games. This year, home sides are 112-76 against the spread. And then we had an overs round. 5 games went over, 3 games went under. Still on the season though, 103 games have gone under and only 85 have gone over the total points line. That probably evens up a little bit. It's not going to get back to 50-50, but it should even up a little bit over these final 2 rounds with a few games where teams either don't need a win, that kind of thing. So we'll get through that. Looking at the ladder, how it currently stands with 2 weeks to go, the Raiders sit a game clear off the Storm, who are 2 games clear now with that win over the Bulldogs on 36 points. Warriors back in the 4th spot on 34 points. And then followed by the Broncos and Sharks on 32, and Panthers now in 7th spot on 31 points. With the Panthers resting players this week, they're very unlikely to win. The race for the top 4 is now for just this 4th spot, because the Bulldogs are likely to win and then go another game up, is between the Warriors, Broncos, and Sharks. It's certainly in the Warriors' hands if they can just win their final 2 games of the season, but they'll need to win both of them because you got the Broncos and Sharks both a win behind, and they both have better points differentials than the Warriors. The Warriors' 2 final games to finish the season are against Parramatta at home, and then they're against Manly at Brookvale Oval. So interesting games coming up to close out the year. So that'll help us set the top 4. And then the race for the top 8. Now with the Roosters losing, they could have locked it up with that win over Parramatta. Now they've kept the Dolphins and Seagulls somewhat with a chance. So particularly if the Roosters don't win their game this week, which they're lining up against the Melbourne Storm. So that's a really tough one in Melbourne. Then that certainly opens the door for the Dolphins and the Seagulls, and potentially that Seagulls-Warriors game in the final round sets up to be a big one. The Dolphins, their run home over the final couple of weeks is the Titans and Raiders. So likely they'll start favorites this week against the Titans, and then depending what Canberra look to do in the final game of the season, and if they need to win, they have the Tigers this week. So depending how the Storm go will determine how much that final round means to Canberra. So bit to play out. Let's get into round number 26. The first game on Thursday night. On paper, this was setting up to be a really good preview of a finals game, but things have definitely changed since then. The Bulldogs went up as $1.38 favorites at -8.5. That was on Monday morning. Rumours around on Monday afternoon that Penrith were going to be resting players, which obviously about 20 minutes ago was outlined in their team sheet for the game this week, and basically putting their reserve grade team on the field and resting virtually everyone. So now the Bulldogs, the current odds are about $1.10 -17.5. So they've added almost 10 points to the handicap, and the total was at 40.5. Right now it's sitting at about 42.5 with that team news. Penrith, they've won 8 straight against the Bulldogs. 3 of the past 4 have been decided by 12 or less. They met just back in round 17. 1 try each in that game. Penrith winning 8-6 as $2 outsiders. And see, Jacob Preston got the only try in the first half. Nathan Cleary scored in the second half. Penrith Bulldogs went into halftime leading 6-2, but all 6 points to the Panthers in the second half with that try and conversion. Bulldogs had slightly more ball. Penrith completed at 86%. I'll just quickly run through this because it's irrelevant considering the teams that are going to be lining up here. Penrith won the penalty count 7-4. Bulldogs 3-2 set restarts. Very little between them in terms of missed tackles, but as we've seen, when you have such different quality of teams on the field, this is a game now the Bulldogs should be winning and should be winning comfortably. Honestly, wouldn't surprise me to see them actually really make a statement here and win by a big margin. They due for something like that. They've lost 3 of their last 4 games. A big win here would really give them some confidence and motivation heading into finals, particularly considering they have the Sharks in the final week, which could be an important game for the Sharks depending on how results go in other games. This is the Bulldogs' opportunity. I've been saying it for a couple of weeks now. For them to be a genuine shot in the final series and potentially make the grand final, that kind of thing, they need to get their attack going. Their defense is good enough. It's been consistent most of the season, but they need to get this attack rolling with Galvin in the halves to be a genuine threat, and there's no better opportunity to do that. They've played the Storm and Roosters the past 2 weeks. This is certainly going to be a much easier game, and it's funny, it wasn't even that long ago, 2023, the Panthers were $1.03 favorites, -30.5 against the Bulldogs. 2 years later, and now the odds are going to be virtually the opposite way around. But now with that team news, Bulldogs to win comfortably. With the total, it's now at about 42.5. 12 of the past 16 head-to-head have gone under the total. Bulldogs last week against the Storm went under. They've had 3 of their past 5 go over the total. And Penrith, they've had 3 of their past 4. I think the only way this game goes over that total is if the Bulldogs can score 30 plus themselves. I don't see the Panthers running in too many points against this Bulldogs defense. So I'd rather look at the Bulldogs team total as opposed to the full game total, because it's clear Penrith are just using this as a rest game and don't care that much about actually winning it. The Warriors versus Eels is the first game on Friday night. Warriors are favourites at home, $1.56 -4.5, and the total is 43.5. The Parramatta Eels have won 5 of the last 6 against the Warriors, but it's been historically a pretty close matchup. Of the last 8 games, 6 of them have been decided by 10 points or less. They last met in round 22 last season, and this is a matchup that only really happens once a year. You can see going back only 1 game each season. It was round 22 last season. The Warriors at home were $1.16 favourites and ended up losing the game 30 points to 20. Looking through what happened there, the Eels scored 5 tries to 4, and the Warriors got 2 of their 4 tries in that final 6 minutes, and effectively final 10 minutes, but in this final 6 minutes while Jake Tahoe was sent to the sin bin. Eels led 18-4 at halftime and then scored 2 converted tries in the second half. Stats-wise, Warriors slightly more of the ball and still completed at 82%. So they did put up good completion numbers and had a decent amount of possession, but still not able to get the job done. Line break 6-4 in favor of the Eels. Meters gained in favor of the Warriors. Parramatta did miss 36 tackles as well, but still only gave up the 20 points. The Warriors, though, the 15 errors, even though their completion rate was good, just a little bit costly. Parramatta also lost the penalty count here, even though they won by 10, 8-3, and also lost set restarts 5-2. So did very well to win that game. And Parramatta kind of positioning themselves as this team that's affecting how the teams in the top 8 are going to line up. They've been in pretty good form recently. When you look through the matches that they've played against decent opposition, and they've been hanging around in games. They beat the Roosters by 20, lost to the Rabbitohs by 4, who came out and won 40-0. They are 1-point winners over the Cowboys, 6-point loss against the Melbourne Storm, and then a 2-point win against the Broncos. That's their last 5 games leading into this. They've covered 3 of their last 5. The non-covers were both games where they started favourite, but that's not the case in this one. Then for the Warriors, they have won their last 2 against the Titans and Dragons, both teams in that bottom half of the ladder. Prior to that, lost 3 straight against the Bulldogs, Dolphins, and Titans. Back at home here, I can definitely understand the Warriors being favourite, but I do think this is going to be a close game. I think it's going to be a 1-score, at most 2-score game. So I'd be looking at the Warriors 1-12, or the try-bet if you think the Eels can get this in a close one. I don't really see it being a blowout. Like the way Parramatta have been hanging around in games, and this season the Warriors have been a side that have consistently been involved in close games. I think this is going to be another one of them. Also a really important game for the Warriors in terms of their top 4 chances. As I mentioned at the beginning of the video, if they drop this, then they have to go over to face Manly, and potentially then it's other results that are going to determine their chances. But right now they still have it in their hands. I think the value there with the Warriors 1-12 is probably the best way at going about it. Eels don't have good numbers on the season in comparison to the Warriors. However, on recent form, it's a lot more even between these two teams. So yeah, I think we're going to see a close game. The total is 43.5. 5 of the past 6 head-to-head have gone over. That's why I think this line is a little bit higher than what it should be, just off that history. The Warriors, they've had 4 of their last 6 games go under the total, and the Eels have been a big underside all season. They've had 5 straight games go under the total. At this current number, I'd definitely be leaning towards the unders. The way Parramatta's playing at the moment, I think they've been having good success with it. It's keeping them in the contest, so they're going to really look to play that way, and I think the Warriors will have no issue with that as well. Obviously, they don't want this game to turn into a shootout. Neither side want that lean, low-scoring, close game in that one. Storm versus Roosters. Melbourne are favourites, $1.44 at home, -7.5, and the total is 42.5. The Storm have won 12 of the past 13 against the Roosters, including the past 7 in a row. They've also won 3 of their past 4 at home versus the Roosters by at least 16 points. They last met round 21 this season, so not all that long ago. And the Storm won that 34-30. It was a game that went back and forth. The Storm were $1.60 favourites. We saw they scored 6 tries to 5 to win that game. It was only a 2-point lead to the Roosters at halftime. Looking through, both teams completed over 80%. Only 5 total line breaks in the game for a game that had 11 tries scored. Plenty of missed tackles, though, that went into that. And then both teams around this 10-11 error mark. Roosters won the penalty count 4-3, but Storm won the set restarts 6-4. So very little between them, as the kind of scoreline suggests. But this time around in Melbourne, the Storm have a significant advantage. They're going to be without Harry Grant for this game with the suspension for the shoulder charge. Melbourne, they've won 5 straight. They've only lost 1 game going all the way back to round 11. So they've won 11 of their last 12, and that loss was only by 2 points. They have certainly been involved in close games recently. Looking through their recent matches, if you just look at their last 6, and you can go back a bit further if you want, but of these last 6, 5 of them have been decided by 6 points or less. And the game against the Broncos, where Brisbane got those injuries to Ezra Mam and Adam Reynolds, was the only game that was decided by more, where they won 22-2. With this Storm attack, they're only scoring around 20 points per game at the moment. Only had 1 game of these last 6 where they've scored over 22, which in fact was against the Roosters. However, they gave up 30 to the Roosters in that game. Roosters, they're coming off an embarrassing loss to the Eels last week in a game that everyone expected them to win, giving up 30 points after only giving up 28 combined points across 3 matches leading into that. So they'll need to tighten up defensively, that's for sure here. There is definitely the chance that Roosters, after beating the Bulldogs the week prior, knowing that they had the Storm following that game, just took the Eels a little bit lightly. Like on paper, they should have had the Eels comfortably beaten, but what happens on the field doesn't always replicate like how these teams completely match up. So I think you'll see a better performance by the Roosters this week. Do think the Storm win, but I think this is going to be another game where the Storm win by a close margin. So Roosters at the plus 7.5. If you get that at the plus 8.5 or the plus 10.5, I definitely don't mind that. But I think the best possible play is the Storm at 1-12. So the Storm to win this in a close game. I think that's the most likely outcome. Storm got the win they needed last week, beating the Bulldogs, because that put them 2 games clear of Canterbury. So now this game against the Roosters and then the final game against the Broncos don't really mean as much. But if the Storm are to rest players for that trip to Brisbane, then they don't want to lose this game and then rest players and potentially lose to the Broncos as well, and then go in with back-to-back losses into the finals. Not that I think it's like will affect that team like potentially could other teams, but it's not ideal. But I also don't think like the Storm have as much motivation to win this game and completely show their hand. But at home, it's very hard to go down there and beat the Storm. Very few teams have been able to do it and also do it consistently. So yeah, Storm in a close one. The total is 42.5. 13 of the past 19 between the two teams have gone under, but the last 2 have gone over. The Roosters, they've been a big overs team. Their last 9 games, 7 of them have gone over the total. And they've also only had 4 games of their last 16 go under the total. So 12-4 to the overs across their last 16 games. And then for the Melbourne Storm, their recent record is favoring the unders. 3 of their last 4 games have gone under. I don't have a strong opinion on the total in this game. Even though the numbers tell me it's probably should be a higher scoring game, I think the way this matchup sets up, I'd be leaning towards the unders. Just the Storm aren't running in big scores like we've seen them do earlier and in the middle part of the season, particularly in day games, which this isn't going to be. And they've been scoring lower, but their defense has still been really good. I think that's kind of what we're going to see. And it'll be a different kind of game compared to what we saw, just over a month ago between these two sides. Raiders versus Tigers. Canberra here at home, $1.22 minus 12.5, and the total is 50.5 points. Canberra, they've won 9 of the past 10 against the Tigers, but the Tigers, they've covered 4 of the past 5 against the Raiders. Canberra have been winning, but only winning by smallish margins, not covering the spread. Or there was the game last season, round 16, that the Tigers won 48-24. The most recent meeting was round 16 this season, Canberra winning 16-12. They didn't cover the 9.5 spread though, but obviously winning as $1.30 favorites. Canberra scored 3 tries to 2 in that game. All 3 of their tries coming within a 10-minute period in that first half. That put them out to a 16-0 lead. Tigers scored 2 tries in the second half, but couldn't bridge the margin. It was a 4-point game for the final 27 minutes of the match. Tigers had more of the ball, but only completed at 68% compared to the Raiders' 82%. Tigers significantly more meters gained. Line breaks were even, but the Raiders missed 46 tackles in this matchup, which is really high by their standards. On the season, they only average 28 missed tackles a game, so almost 20 above their season average. Errors 16 made by the Tigers, and then Raiders won the penalty count 4-6. Tigers won the set restarts 6-2. Interesting game this. Expect Canberra to be winning. Tigers losing that game last week against North Queensland. That really ruined their chances. They were like a long shot chance of working their way into the top 8, but had to win that game, especially when you look at their for and against. Couldn't afford to lose. They needed to win, and they needed results to go their way. The results went their way, but they didn't get the win that they needed to have. So Tiger season is now completely over. Raiders obviously will want to keep their form going. They've only lost 1 of their last 12 games, which was a 6-point loss against the Dragons. But at home here, the Raiders should be too good for this Tigers side and win this game comfortably. They would have got a huge rush from their win over Penrith last week. The only issue with Canberra here is a letdown off such a big game, beating the reigning premiers and still sitting on top of the ladder. But I think they'll do enough to make sure that they get the job done here against this Tiger side, who have shown glimpses of good performances. Like, they won 2 in a row against the Seagulls and Bulldogs going into that game. And like the Bulldogs, their form lately hasn't been great, but then the Seagulls came out and put in 58 points after that game against the Tigers. But they just couldn't, like, conceding 34 against the Cowboys. As much as a similar defensive performance to that, they don't really stand a chance here. So, like the Raiders, to win comfortably, the total is 50.5, suggesting this is going to be a high-scoring game, particularly when you consider 9 of the past 11 have gone under, and those totals have been in the mid to high 40s. Now we're seeing a 50.5 number. The Tigers, they've had 4 of their past 5 go under. The Raiders, their last 3 have gone under. So, purely on trends and what the number for this game should be, I'd lean towards the unders, but this line of the totals suggests to me the bookmakers are expecting this game to be a real shootout and the Tigers to struggle defensively. I am certainly aware of that, but on the number, lean towards it going under. But you're obviously going to need to hope that the Tigers actually show something in defense. Like, they can't afford a repeat of last week, and there's the chance that happens. I think instead of playing the total for this game, I'd rather play try scorers for the Raiders. So stay tuned for the preview of the try scorer selections. That video will be out later in the week, closer to game times. Dragons against the Sea Eagles. $1.91 a piece. Bookmakers currently can't split them, and the total is 48.5. The Dragons, they've won 3 of the past 5 against Manly, and 3 of the past 4 have been decided by 8 points or less. It's had a history of being a close matchup. Stats-wise, there's very little between them. Seagulls, the slightly better attacking side, and also the slightly better defensive side. And then when you add in home field advantage for the Dragons, you can understand why there's very little between them in the odds here. Round 7 at Brookvale was the last meeting this season, and the Dragons won that game as the outsider, $2.45, 20 points to 18. Looking through what happened there, 3 tries each, but the missed conversion by Ruben Garrick was the difference, as both teams had won a penalty goal. There was a sin bin in that game in the 52nd minute. Both teams got 1 try during that period. Ben Trebojevic scored and also Jacob Little scored, so didn't really give a significant advantage to the Seagulls. Dragons led 8-0 at halftime, so Seagulls were kept scoreless there in the first half. A low-scoring grind first half. Seagulls, more of the ball. Completion rates were even. More meters for the Seagulls, off a few more runs as well. But 62 line breaks in favor of the Dragons, and only 18 missed tackles for St. George. Really good defensive numbers. Their missed tackles, they miss less than anyone else in the competition. Interesting, though, the Dragons miss the least number of tackles. However, they're giving up the 4th most number of points per game. Other stats from this matchup, both teams similar number of errors, 14 penalties, 9 of them going to the Dragons, and Seagulls, and also 5 set restarts each. Really interesting game this. Looking at their form coming in, Manly's wasn't looking great. They lost 4 in a row before beating the Dolphins last week. It's going to be interesting how they back up that performance this time around. And then for the Dragons, they were kept scoreless by the Rabbitohs last week. So a really disappointing performance by them, and also conceding 40 points after giving up no more than 14 for 3 consecutive games against the Warriors, Sharks, and Raiders. So real letdown performance by the Dragons last week, and potentially have they kind of shut up shop for the rest of the season. They got the Seagulls and then Panthers to finish. Just not sure on the Dragons. I don't want to make too much of a factor of last week, but these teams put in completely polar opposite performances last week. The Seagulls defense wasn't great either, I will say that. But in terms of attacking perspective, Seagulls look significantly better. At this stage, I'm leaning towards Manly, but in a close game. Dragons have been involved in a lot of close games recently and throughout the whole season, to be fair. Majority of their games have been decided by this kind of 1-10 margin. And this does look to be another one. There's not much between them. Seagulls slightly better. So I'm not sure if I want to go the try bet, either team 1-10, 1-12, or just take Manly on the money line. So going to look at this game closer to when it gets underway to decide which way I go. But right now I'm just slightly cautious of just putting too much weight behind last week's performance, as the Dragons were playing a lot better than what their last week's performance suggests, and potentially can get back to that. But we are late in the season, and this only being the second last game, how much motivation is there? Can these players get up for this game? Also knowing that they have Penrith the week after, they may just be looking at that game as their grand final. Let's see if we can beat Penrith in the final game of the season. The signs point to Manly winning. Manly also do have more to play for, particularly if leading into this game the Roosters have already lost against the Melbourne Storm on the Friday night. Then there's certainly a lot on the line for Manly. So right now, that's the way that I'd be going. The total is 48.5. The past 5 head-to-head have gone under the total. The Seagulls, they've been a big unders team basically all season. Going through their past 17 games, only 3 of them have gone over the total. And then for the Dragons, they had this period where they're a big overside, but 3 of their past 4 now have gone under. So they're trending the opposite direction. As much as their defense has been good, they've just been involved in low-scoring games recently. They haven't scored over 22 points in the last 4. So I'd like the unders here at the 48.5, and just hope the Seagulls don't go crazy like they did last week against the Dolphins. Cowboys against the Broncos. The Broncos are favorites here, $1.47 minus 6.5, and the total is 49.5. Brisbane won the last meeting by 10 points over the Cowboys. That was at Suncorp in round 3 this season. They were $1.14 favorites at minus 17.5. Looking through what happened in that game, they scored 4 tries to 3 and led 12-0 at halftime. So all the Cowboys points, all 16 coming in that second half. And then Broncos scored 2 of their 4 tries in the second half. Stats-wise, Brisbane more off the ball. They completed 84%, so did all things right. Won the line breaks 7-2. And the Cowboys missed 38 tackles in this game. Broncos coming off a huge week of line breaks last week in their game against Newcastle. I think they put up 14 of them. They are now leading the league in line breaks overall on the season. And the Cowboys, one of the worst defensive teams, conceding just over 28 points a game, which ranks them 16th. They also give up the second most line breaks in the competition. So I am very surprised for this game that the Broncos are only minus 6.5 favorites. I know they're on the road. It's not like an easy matchup, and they have the Storm to end the season. But Broncos they're, aside from the Warriors, and obviously if the Warriors have already lost their game before this one, then it sets up really well for the Broncos if they can put in a good win here to try and snatch that 4th spot. And I really can't see any way that they lose this game if they turn up in somewhat similar fashion to what they did last week against the Knights, or even the week prior against the Dolphins at home. It is back-to-back away games. Like, they played the Knights last week and now need to play up in Townsville, so there's a bit of travel involved there, and the Storm following this. But with Broncos are half serious, they win this and win it by double digits. They won the last 5 against North Queensland by at least 10 points, and like, as much as North Queensland, they've won 2 in a row, they've only been against low tier opposition, West Tigers and Newcastle. Then prior to that, lost against Parramatta and the Sharks. So I think the Broncos will be far too good. Expect them to win this comfortably. The total is 49.5. 7 of the past 8 head have gone over. Cowboys, they've had 3 of their last 4 go under. Broncos, 3 of their last 4 go over. If Broncos really do a number on them here, then this game will go over. If Broncos really turn up, then it'll go under. So I'd lean towards the over, but it is a very high number, so just be cautious of it. If it was down at 47.5, then I'd be very happy playing it, but still, even at the 49.5, do like the overs. Then on Sunday, we have the Sharks against the Knights. Cronulla off the bye here. $1.13 favorites, minus 16.5, and the total is 49.5. The Sharks, they've won 5 of the last 6 against the Knights. And also, between these two teams, Newcastle did win 1 of these games, but 5 of the last 6 have been decided by at least 18 points. Sharks, prior to their bye, had won 5 of their last 6 games, which is an 8-point loss against the Dragons in there. Prior to the bye, they beat the Titans 54-22, so a 32-point win in that game. And Newcastle, they're really struggling. Like, of teams who've really given up on the season, Newcastle are one of them. They've lost now 7 straight games, and they've lost 4 in a row by at least 26 points. They've conceded 38 or more in each of those games. And this is a game the Sharks win just by however many they want to. And there's certainly the chance they run in 50 points again at home here against the Knights, who just cannot defend at the moment. And they also haven't been able to score points. Like early in the season, it was their defense that was keeping them in games and got them a few wins here and there. But now with playing absolutely no defense and also their attack struggling, like they should have definitely scored more than 4 points against the Cowboys a couple of weeks ago with the amount of errors the Cowboys made and the kind of the field position Newcastle had. But couldn't find points, and Cowboys are the second worst defensive team as well. Yeah, this game really shouldn't be close at all. I think the Sharks probably give Newcastle another 30 plus point defeat. Quickly looking at the last time they met, the Sharks won by 20. That was back in round 7 this season. Cronulla scoring 6 tries, two of those 3 tries to the Knights coming in the final 10 minutes. Sharks scored 5 of their 6 tries by the 49th minute mark. There was a sin bin to James Schiller, and Sharks scored 2 tries during that period. But in the current attacking form off the bye, with still the chance of the top 4, I expect the Sharks to win this game by a similar margin. They had more ball, 56%, completed at 85%. Only had 4 line breaks as well. I think they'll get many more than that in this one, particularly an afternoon game as well. And then Knights missed 41 tackles. Sharks also missed 45, and the Knights only got the 14 points. 16-10 errors. Sharks won the penalties 7-5, and the set restarts 4-2. Should be a real comfortable win here for the Sharks. The total is 49.5. 3 of the past 4 head-to-head have gone under the total. Last time they met, it was only 42.5. Now we have a 49.5 total on the back of this Newcastle defense. Another one of these games where it just comes down to how many points Cronulla score. If this game's to go over the number, then the Sharks are going to have to get the 40, like at least 40 points themselves. So I'd much rather playing their team total than the full game over if you wanted to play the overs here. That's the way I lean. I think the Sharks, if they bring similar attack to what they did a couple of weeks ago in a very similar setup and now against an opposition that's even more out of form than the Titans, then yeah, we should see the Sharks running about the 40-point mark, which will go over their team total. So that's the way I'd rather play it. Also, definitely wouldn't talk you out of the nice team total going under, particularly with this game having such a high total. If you get it close to the 16 mark, then I think it's probably a good bet, because right now with the number at 49.5, they're expecting a 34-14 scoreline or 32-16 scoreline within that range. And if you can get the under 16.5, the only way it goes over is if the Sharks give up late tries. So you could also look at the Knights' first half team total going under as well. I think that would be a good option. Sharks are pretty solid first half defense. They rank 3rd in the league, and the Knights are the worst first half attacking side and have been kept scoreless many a times. And the final game, Dolphins against the Titans. $1.52 for the Dolphins, minus 4.5. You've got a team that's leaking points like crazy, starting a 4.5 point favorite right now. The total 52.5. The away team has won in the past 4 head-to-head and covered the spread in all 5 meetings. And the Dolphins, they've won 4 of the 5 against the Titans so far in this rivalry. Dolphins 3 straight losses, but still have a chance of making finals. Titans obviously want to take away that chance for them. They're on a 4-game losing streak, but this will be a game that they should really try to win. Neither of these teams can defend, so I think we're going to see a bit of a shootout here. Dolphins, they have the more to play for. They have the home field advantage as well, so can understand them being favorites, but I definitely couldn't back them at the current price. So probably be staying away from the money line in this game. Just Dolphins, their current form, it's just not worth getting involved in them. I think this is a game we're going to see plenty of tries, plenty of points. So this try scorers is the way to go. The last meeting, Dolphins won 36-10 as outsiders in that game, and that was back in round 5 this season. They scored 5 tries to 2. And there were 2 sin bins in that game. In the first minute and the 30th minute, Dolphins led 16-0 at halftime. They scored 3 tries in the second half, and Titans got both of their tries in the second half. Much more of the ball for the Dolphins here. Completion rates were even, about 500 extra meters gained of 216 runs compared to just 159. Line breaks 5-2, only 25 and 26 tackle breaks and missed tackles. And errors were even at 10. Dolphins won the penalty count 9-4. And Titans won the set restarts 5-1. In terms of a tip in this game of who I think is going to win, like Dolphins have the extra motivation to win, so that'd be the way that I'd go. But I wouldn't be surprised if the Titans were to somehow win this game. And yeah, I think we'll see plenty of points. So do the over, even though the last 4 have gone under the total. The Titans, 3 of their last 4 have gone over. And then for the Dolphins, they have had 4 of their last 5, including their last 3, go over the total. It's just the game against the Warriors that's been the only miss in their last 5. So recapping the games for the Panthers, Bulldogs should be winning, and this comes down to how many points the Bulldogs score. Then the Warriors versus Eels, think we see a close game. Do like the Eels a little bit as the underdog, but I think Warriors should be favorites. Storm versus Roosters. I think the Storm win this in a close game. We can get the Roosters at plus 8.5 or close to that 10 mark. Then definitely don't mind that. Or the Storm 1-12. Raiders should beat the Tigers. Dragons, Seagulls, I like the Seagulls here. I would like them even better if they went out to more of an underdog at $2 or greater. Broncos should comfortably beat the Cowboys. Sharks, big winners over the Knights. And Dolphins, Titans, I just think we'll see points in this game, and don't love either side, but the value is probably with the Titans, or even just taking the Titans team total as well. There's a few ways you can play it there. So that's how I'm approaching betting on the games this week. If you want to see all my final bets for the final couple of weeks and then into the finals, the link to that is in the description. That's also where you can use the Bet Finder tools to analyze team stats, break it down by situations. You can see how teams perform in home games, away games, when they're favorite, when they're an underdog, day matches, night matches, if it's fine, if it's wet, all the different situations, what their stats are, how they perform. Also research your try scorers, the positions that are favored. Everything you need to bet on the NRL is in there. All the tools I use. So definitely check that out. The try scorer preview will be out later in the week, going through all the most likely try scorers in these games. We got one game of AFL coming up this week on Wednesday night. That'll wrap up the AFL regular season, and then there's a week off then into finals. I'll be posting a video. If you bet on the AFL, you'll definitely want to watch that, where we'll recap the betting data from the season and set up for the finals, so stay tuned for that on the channel. And then other things going, NFL starts in about a week and a half, so I'm really excited for that. Keep an eye out for previews and information on betting on the NFL, and last season was my best NFL season of all time, so I'm really excited for this season to get underway. And then only other thing is Spring Carnival. That gets underway after this weekend. Obviously, we'll wrap up August. After Saturday, we should be able to lock in a profitable August. So far this year, we're sitting at 268 units profit on horse racing. So that's since the beginning of January. What that means is for every $50 you bet, you multiply that by 268. So right now, that's $13,400 profit for 50 unit bettors. And with the unit staking, like I've talked about this a few times through these videos, same rules apply and same principles apply, whether you're betting on sports or horse racing. With your units, you always want to keep your units to a minimum. Don't be betting 5, 10, 15 units or anything like that on a single game or a single horse race. For racing, we keep all the bets to 2 units or less. So the bets that I really like, and which for example, on a Saturday, there might be 2, 3, 4 at absolute most. That'll be the 2 unit plays, and the majority of all the other bets are either 1 unit or 1.5 units. So you're only outlaying a really small percentage, like 1, 1.5, or 2% of your betting bankroll, and you're still able to. Right now, we're coming into September, so we're almost 8 months through the year, and whatever amount you started with, we're getting close to 4 times in that through the year so far. And you might remember last year we did the Spring Carnival 50 unit profit guarantee. So if we didn't make 50 units across September, October, and November combined, then everyone who joined and were a new member for the Spring Carnival got the following 3 months for free. Last year's Spring Carnival, we did 49.5 units. Went through everyone who joined, got the summer, so December, January, February, completely free. And during that period of summer, we made 126 units profit. So combined, that's 176 units across that period. And 176 units for a $50 bettor is almost $9,000. It's $8,800, which that compared to the investment to be a part of the racing show, you're looking at almost 20 times returns on the investment. Plus, you're learning how to choose which horses to back and approach betting on those races. Plus, it's a lot better than losing money betting on horse racing as well. So I'll put the link to that in the description. You can go through, like, I'm very upfront and transparent about the results of horse racing. Like, not every bet wins. We win about 40% of the selection. So for every 10 horse racing bets, about 4 win, 6 lose on average. But it's been 47 months now since I publicly made the selections available, and every single bet's tracked, so you can go through and look at over 6,200 selections bet by bet. That's 47 months worth of bets since I started providing this service for members, and there's only been 2 months that finished in negative during that period. So we've had 45 profitable months. On average, each month is about 37 units profit. So once again, just multiply whatever your average bet size is by 37, and that breaks down to what you'd make on average per month. And the best thing about betting, and compared to like other investments, is it's a compounding bet. So unless you're taking your profits out every single week, if you keep your money in there, it allows your bankroll to grow, and then you can bet more in a still alignment with your bankroll, as opposed to risking a higher percentage. So it allows you to compound that turnover, as opposed to just getting like 10% return over a set amount across the year, or looking at it like, well, I'm just gonna put $5,000 here and get 10% returns. Because how you can look at it is each week we outlay about 30 to 35 total units across a Wednesday and Saturday, and that doesn't mean that that's the total amount. So if you have a 100 unit bankroll, you're not outlaying the whole 100 units. Like, you never want to bet everything of your total bankroll on one day or 1 week. You want to only always outlay a percentage of it on that day for the best long-term strategy and just the best practice. But the point is that if you had $5,000 you're putting into an investment, you need that whole $5,000, you'll get a percentage return on that $5,000. Whereas with betting, if you have $5,000, you might turn over 30 units, which is $1,500. But in 4 weeks, you've turned over now $6,000. 4 weeks at the $1,500. Now that's more than the $5,000 initial investment that you've turned over. And especially when you're getting a 27% return as opposed to a 10% return. So now when you look at it, $1,500 over the 52 weeks of the year, that's $78,000 you've outlaid at a 27% profit on that turnover, is significantly more than 10% on $5,000, which is the same amount that you started with in both situations. And that's not even accounting for the fact that if you're making profits, which you are following the racing selections, then that amount that you can turn over would increase as well if you're not taking the money out. So it's a really, really good strategy to build up your bankroll, build up the money that you have, and get the best returns on your money, as opposed to just sitting somewhere and not doing much work for you. Like, because remember, at the end of the day, money decreases in value over time, so it's sitting there doing nothing doesn't achieve anything. So if you have any questions about the racing or anything you'd like to know more about it, feel free to comment below, send an email. I'm happy to answer any questions you have, and you can go to the website, look through all the results. Everything is publicly available there. Thanks guys for watching. I'll see you in the try scorer video. Hope you're having a great week.